Hey, welcome back. We are in part 3 and in the home stretch of our memory quilt series. Once you have all of your blocks interfaced and cut to the size you need, go ahead and organize them by the order in which you're going to be sewing. Recall back in part 1, I suggested organizing your blocks into a pattern where you like the color distribution, the patterns, the logos, how they're laid out, and then take a picture of it so that you can remember how you want to arrange your blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and get mine arranged and I will be right back. All right, I've got all of my blocks in order, so the next step is just to start sewing. One thing I wanted to mention before you start assembling and sewing is this is the time if you want to add sashing between your blocks. You would cut those to whatever width you want. Just make sure that for two sides of your blocks, you're adding extra length to those sashing strips to accommodate the other strips that are going to be on the opposite sides. And I'll show you an example of what sashing looks like here. If you want to add any type of embroidery to your blocks to customize them, now would also be the time to do that, because then your embroidery stitches, especially if you're doing hand embroidery, are going to be reinforced really nicely by the quilting over it later. I'm going to do 4 blocks across for my quilt, and then it'll be 7 blocks down. To get started, grab your first 2 blocks and you're going to lay them right sides together. Your interfacing sides should be facing out. Bring those to your machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance straight down the side. You don't have to worry about back stitching because these seams are going to be reinforced through your actual quilting later. Do your very best to keep everything lined up. Sometimes the interfacing can kind of catch or make things a little bit stiff. And so keeping things lined up can be a little challenging. You might have to stop and readjust a few times. If you want, this is also a good opportunity to use clips if you're more comfortable doing that, just to keep everything held together while you sew. Our first attached block. All right, keep working your way through your stack until you have enough pairs that are sewn together to complete 1 row. I already have 2 pairs sewn together, so that makes my 4 total. Lay your pairs right sides together, just like you did your individual blocks, right on top of each other. I'm going to sew right down this edge, and what that's going to do is make my first row. So now I've got my first row assembled. I don't know how much you can kind of see it here. So 1 whole row done. When you are ready to start assembling rows together, you're going to line them up by their seams here. While you're sewing, I want you to really carefully feel with your fingers that they're still aligned. And that's going to make sure when you have these just kind of plain square style memory quilts, if this is the style you're going to do, then you're going to have nice clean lines that always line up. So what we're going to do, this was our first row, this is our second row. I want my first row to be on top. That way when I sew it here and unfold it like this, that's still my top row. Okay, so I'm just going to lay this just like that on top of row 2. And like I said earlier, if you want to, and if it helps you, you can clip where these seams are. So grab some clips here. It's going to have some that don't match up perfectly because you're most often when you're making memory quilts using different types of fabrics. You might have some knits, some cottons, some wool, I mean, all kinds of different things. And they all stretch at different rates. So it's never going to be perfect, but we can get it pretty dang clean. So I'm all clipped up. I'm going to go ahead and sew 1/4 of an inch down this edge real quick. If you see your interfacing or your fabric in general kind of starting to bunch up, be really careful to try to smooth that out as best as you can so that when we open this, we don't have our fabric all smushed and bunched up looking. There is our first 2 rows, as you can see. All right, so we have nice clean lines, and you could iron this. I would recommend doing that later on. But we do have our first 2 rows here, and then I will show you the entire quilt top when it's all done. And there we are. There is our quilt top. And if you're following along with me and doing your own right now, at this point you're going to decide whether you want to put maybe an outer border going around it, or how you want to finish this off. From here on out, it's just like any other quilt as far as getting it basted. We'll do one more video showing some quilting options that you have for these. So meet me back here in just a little while and we'll get this finished out.